and I stepped on it and took off so fast. I said, well, how do I know that a truck on the highway is going to see this car? I felt like I'm in a boxcar when I was a kid. And he said, oh, and they said, no, don't worry about this. And they showed me a picture of a 16-wheeler truck sitting on top of this car to show it's indestructible. And I said, that wasn't the picture to show me. And so I looked at, and so I wasn't convinced for a long time. And then ultimately, I said, boy, I really think this is the case.
But I mean, it makes sense.
Just one more thing.
Okay.
And the one more thing is that I said that, whether he's successful or not, I am really glad that I've invested in this company because I'm helping. This guy's saving the earth. This guy's an unbelievable guy, brilliant guy, great businessman, and saving the planet.
Okay, you could be a philanthropist, but let's talk about...
I intended to make money.
Right, and you have. You've made a lot of money on this, but there have been so many times along the way when it was probably hard to stand by. Were there times that you had doubts since you became an investor, whether it was Solar City getting wrapped in, whether it was all of the issues that got brought up along the way, or have you just been steadfast the entire time?
The 420 private equity
well, I do talk to them regularly. And I am aware, so it's not me relying on what other people are telling me is, things I should think about. We're talking with them all the time and to trying to understand what issues are, and not just with Elon, but with other executives at the company and with the chairwoman. And so we talk regularly, and no, I was never shaken. In fact, guys in my office said they were amazed that I was sailing right through it. I was convinced the whole time that this was going to be a very successful venture, and I told other people I thought it would be. I was convinced it would be.
We're watching shares of Tesla this morning. Take a look at this stock because it is surging 12% this morning. This after yesterday's wild ride, closing in on $900 this morning, and we have one of the great bulls on this stock with us this morning. Ron Barron is here. I have a question for you, by the way, before we get to any other issue. At $900, if we get there, would you split this stock?
No.
No. Because, given the retail interest in this stock, you could make an argument to split it if it stays at these levels.
Well, you can make an argument that if it's retail, then what they should do is they should buy Barron Funds that owns Tesla, so they don't have to do it themselves.
But that's a good advertisement.
I don't think that it's a great idea to split stocks. Buffett has never split his stock, except when it got really high, then he gave you that little
shares, right?
Baby thing. I don't think it really pays to do that.
The B shares was more of a way of letting other investors who had been in another company he acquired go ahead and stay in and get out.
Yeah. Can we go back to the whole idea of just discipline in a portfolio? I mean, you said one of your portfolio managers asked you if you should lighten up. I mean, you understand the question, right? It's had such a huge run.
So, there was a...
And you're not selling anything?
No.
Even though?
No, in fact, I was hoping that our business would grow so that I can have more money to invest in Tesla. How's that?
To add even more to the position?
Yes.
Are you adding to the position now?
If I was up to me, I would, but in the way we're structured, if we have real estate and we have in emerging markets and we have international and we have small cap funds, they can't buy Tesla stock. So basically, So let me go to price for a second. That let me do process for a second and then price. The idea is that what we do is we invest for the long term in growth companies that are competitively advantaged with great people. That's what we do. Growth companies, competitively advantaged, invest for the long term, great people. And so it's a very simple process, except people can't do it. So if you talk about Amazon, very few people in 1999 would have bought Amazon and held it when the stock went down, and then the stock went up dramatically. If they had held on, they could have done it. So basically, retail people, regular people without knowledge about it, of understanding of business, how can you possibly hold on when you have a volatile stock? How could you hold on to Tesla stock when it goes up and down when you're a retail investor? This isn't retail. And retail people would come in and go out. But so my idea is that we don't invest in the market on, to go back in, on what's happening in the news, not on Asian flu, not on Spanish flu, not so not on impeachments, not on oil price, nothing like that. It's just strictly on fundamentals. And when you talk about holding for the long term, so two companies, Primerica and MSCI, both went public around 2008. And they both told me, both executives, both companies, they said, Ron, you enabled us to go public. I am forever indebted to you. Primerica said that. The stock was $20 at the time, spinning out, it's now $125. Okay. We bought stock that originally held on every single share. Next thing, MSCI. And this is, I'm getting to the, can I go? Or?
Yep, go ahead.
MSCI, Henry Fernandez, I've had him on with me in 2008. Stock was $15 a share, had him on last year. Here's an immigrant, comes from Venezuela. I don't remember which country, one of those countries, they had to flee the country to stay alive, comes to America penniless. He comes up with the idea of MSCI, Morgan Stanley, brings it public. We invest in it, and $15 a share in 2008. It's now $300. And we have never, so he asked me to speak to his board last week, and he wanted to understand how is it possible that everyone was buying and selling his stock, and they had a speed bump when they did the risk management. How was it possible, Ron, that you invested this whole time and never sold a share? And he said that what he wanted to do was have me speak to his board to have them, so I could explain to them, how did we withstand pressure to sell? How did we do that? And I think there's another triple or quadruple coming in this one.
So what's the answer, though? I mean, we're just trying to get to the...
So he said the answer was that he thought that I believed in him.
Right.
And then in addition to that, I really liked the business. And so after I did this presentation to their board, there were 20, 25 people. Then afterwards, it turned out that the former president of Fidelity Management was sitting in this meeting. And so he walks out with me to the elevator and he says, Ron, you know, you're friends with Peter Lynch and Will Danoff. And did Will ever tell you the story about what he tells analysts that he inaugurated an initiation to Fidelity? I said, no. He said, well, first thing he does, he puts them all in a room, and then he puts a telephone with a speaker on it, and he calls his mother. His mother is in Alabama or Arkansas, wherever I think she is, and he calls her and says, Mom, what did you always, on the speaker, and all the analysts are sitting around and said, Mom, what did you always tell me when I was young? And she says, Will, I always told you that people know the price of everything, they know the value of nothing. And so basically, that's the whole idea here. That the idea is that, of course, anyone can see the price of the stock, but you can't tell me, the regular person, that this Tesla stock is going to go up 10 times or 20 times from here in the next 10 years.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you, and we're going to go fast with them. One, Elon Musk's compensation. So he's making, he captures 1% of the company for every $50 billion of the company that he moves in terms of the market share. Are you happy with that?
Well,
you find that acceptable?
Of course, I found it acceptable because I voted for it. But if you think about it, he didn't work for any salary at all for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so if he makes our shareholders a lot of money, then he's entitled to a lot of money. How much is he entitled to? The board decides that, and the shareholders vote on it. And so I voted for it, so I obviously thought it was okay.
Okay. Elon Musk says on the conference call just recently that he thinks that retail investors understand this company better than institutional investors. You spent a lot of time with both. Is he right? And if so, why?
Peter Lynch would say that people, when they go into a mall, 30 or 40 years ago, when they go to a Gap store, they understand that that was an interesting investment. And I think the same thing with retail people. My grandchildren, one guy is 5, one guy is 7, and my 7-year-old, a couple years ago, says to me, Grandpa, that those cars, they're very bad for the environment. Tesla is good for the environment, even children. Tesla's built their whole business, no advertising. You watch on, see, a brand, everybody knows the name Tesla. Isn't that amazing? That you built a business with not a dime spent?
The stock was up 20% yesterday. It's up 12.5% this morning. That's $100 this morning in the pre-market, which maybe you're right. Maybe it's a lot of people just figuring it out. But at some point, do you worry about momentum moves?
Well, I think about it, and I think I'm responsible for other people's money. I'm the biggest shareholder in our mutual funds.
Right.
And so, on the other hand, yeah, I think about it.
Let me ask you
but
about
I do
that,
think we're going to make 10 times from here in the next 10 years.
You said something before the commercial break, by the way, that some people on Twitter seem to pick up, which is you said, look, even if this didn't work, I was happy investing in the company because I thought that Elon Musk was doing the right thing for the world, right? Climate, all of these other issues that I know you support.
Yep.
There are some people who would look at that statement and say, but you're a fiduciary for my money. You shouldn't be investing based on whether you think this is good for the world or good for the future. Look, I always say investing in Elon Musk is like, or betting against him is like betting against humanity. You want the guy to succeed. I get that. But the question is, when you thought about this investment, I assume, or I hope you did this strictly on the financials.
I did it on the financials. I felt I had no downside. And no downside, even if they weren't very successful, is that they were going to be the leader in this business, and they could be acquired. I thought there was no downside.
Right. Okay, let me ask you.
I thought the worst case, we would double our money.
Okay, let me ask you a separate question. Given how bullish you are on the company, given that Elon Musk tried to take this company private at $420, some people at that time thought that was crazy. Do you think that he was trying to rob the shareholders?
I think he was really discouraged. If you work the hours that he works, and are under the stress that he was under, and he was being attacked relentlessly by embedded interests who wanted him to fail. And so if you're in business and all of a sudden the oil companies will be impacted negatively by what you do, and the car dealers are negatively impacted by what you do, and the OEMs are negatively, and the short sellers are negative. So all those guys are up against him, and this guy is standing alone. Wouldn't you be upset about the way people are treating you? If you're doing something that you think is great for the world and everyone attacks you every day, why would you think that's that's acceptable? And so in fact, I thought this was a really bad idea. I thought he would be better off if he remained a public company. But if he went private, I was interested in participating as a investor to allow other investors to be able to continue to hold their investment position in Tesla. And I was being considered as an entity. But I recommended against doing that, but that would have been beneficial if I was chosen to be the person who had the ability for individuals to continue to invest, even though it was a private company.
Joe?
Yeah. So, Ron, your record is it just speaks for itself, obviously. But I was thinking about it,
Thank you.
When I was just a stockbroker for 10 years, you do learn something. You learn about when you actually make an investment, you have to 6 months or a year or 2 years, you're in there. You have to look back and you actually have a position where I don't think the media, that doesn't normally happen with people that are just covering it. So the point I was going to make was, as hard as it is to buy when there's blood on the streets, and it is really hard to do that, I think and so you should do the opposite of what you're feeling. How about when you got a stock that you bought at 30 that's at 400 or at 60, and then at 90, and then at 120? How about the old saying, Ron, no one ever went broke taking a profit? Sometimes it's just as hard to hang on or to buy more of something that's already tripled. That's the opposite of doing what the obvious thing is to do again. And I don't think anyone has done that better than you. You probably aren't going to sell your Tesla even though it's over 900, are you?
I would like to be able to get more money to buy more Tesla, actually. I think that what's going to happen in that stock is that when people were selling it short for the past 10 years, and the stock quadrupled, by the way, but for the first 9 years, it didn't change so much, go up and go down. But there was a good reason why people were selling it short. The reason was that it's very, very hard to start a car company, almost impossible. So you wouldn't dream that it would be possible to go out there and hire 50,000 employees and design cars and raise the capital that you need and have a brand that everyone knows, Tesla brand. My grandchildren, who are 6 and 8 years old, they know the Tesla brand. So basically, how is that? And they haven't spent a dime on advertising. How can you get a battery? They couldn't get batteries to go more than 100 miles on a charge before Tesla comes along, and now it's 400 miles, and it will be way more than that ultimately, and at a reasonable cost. So when we started off, I guess a few years before, it cost $100,000 for a battery. And then it could go a reasonable distance, 200 miles. And then it cost $30,000. Now it's less than 10, probably it's close to 5 before very long. And the cost of an internal combustion engine is $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. And a lot of places are going to ban them. There won't be any cars. But people didn't believe. And the only way you could possibly believe and possibly come up with a good opinion is to go do the research yourself. You can't rely on other people telling you what to buy or what to sell. When you talk about not ever going broke by taking a profit, of course you don't go broke if you take a profit. On the other hand, you never get rich taking a profit either, because a good portion of what you realize you have to pay in taxes. So, and then you got to find something else that you like as well as what you already own and you know very well, so why would you do that?
Ron, what happens?
And so my thinking...
what happens to those other billionaires you were talking about that have made $1 billion and then seem to fall back into the trap that sort of novice investors sometimes fall in? What do you think really? Why haven't you ever gotten to that point where you decide, all right, I'm going to, because it does seem to happen a lot, and you do sound smart when you're negative for some reason.
Well, so why haven't I? Of course I have. I didn't start off to be a long-term investor. I became a long-term investor because of the disastrous mistakes I made by selling stocks early or by not buying stocks. The biggest mistake I ever made was in 1999. I would go visit Jeff Bezos. I visited 2 or 3 times in a year. 2 or 3 times I visited him, trying to convince him, and I talked to him on the phone every month, trying to get him to purchase Sotheby's. So we bought Sotheby's at $20 a share, went to $40 a share because I thought you could take what they were doing to the internet. And I was trying to convince him that that was a good thing for him to own. He didn't buy that idea. And the stock, when the chairman of the company was indicted for price fixing with Christie's, went to prison, and the stock went from $40 Sotheby's to $10 where he sold it. So we lost half of our money. And I always thought that was the biggest mistake I ever made. The biggest mistake I ever made was seeing Jeff Bezos for a year up close and personal and not investing in it. How could I miss that? And Netflix. And so Netflix, we were an investor in that when the market cap was $2 billion. It's now what, 200 billion? I don't know. And I didn't invest. Fortunately for me, some other guys in our office invested, but I didn't. And I became friendly with Reed. And when one opportunity that I had, the stock fell 30 or 40%. And I wasn't owning it. I had sold early. I had made my 30 or 40% and sold. And now the stock had gone a multiple of what I paid for it. And then it fell short because it had a pricing issue. And when they made that, then Reed called and said, Ron, this is your time. And I didn't even do that. And the stock went up who knows how much afterwards. And so I learned not to miss these things. And when I have something like a Tesla, I told you a long time ago that I thought that we would make 20 times our money in Tesla. So far, we've made 4 times. I now think we're going to make double or triple again over the next 5 years, and double or triple again over the next 5 years. I think there's 10 times more to go in Tesla before I have to even think about this, if we're right. And SpaceX. So we've just been investing. SpaceX is a private company. We've invested 180. We invested 130 million, I think. 125, 130. It's now worth about 180. I think we're going to make 20 times in SpaceX. Over the next 10 years. That is an amazing opportunity as well. There was just something where you saw this rocket, first time private citizens have ever made a rocket go into space, launch it. This is government business. This isn't the private company. And we did it. So how did he do it? He did it because he figured out that the rockets that you send up are normally a couple or $300 million. That's what they cost, and they throw them away. The fuel cost to get them into space is $200,000, $300,000, and you throw away a rocket for $200 or $300 million. That's crazy. And so what Elon says is that, so I'll call him Elon instead of Elon Musk or instead of Mr. Musk. And what he said was, gee, why are we throwing away these rockets? Why don't we use them over and over again? This ship that we just saw go into space, that was something that had been used already 5 times. Got 5 more uses to come out of that one. The next rocket that we're going to be building, that SpaceX is going to be building, will be used, over and over and over again. So instead of doing it for hundreds of millions, they did it this time for 50 or 60. I don't remember exactly what. And the next one's going to be very, very small. So their innovation was sending a rocket up and bringing it back down and landing it just like they did in Star Wars. You land on the tail end, and it's like dropping, other people said, it's like dropping a pencil and expecting it to land on the eraser and stand up still. So first couple times they tried it, didn't work, then they got it to work. And so that gives them a huge competitive advantage. Now the opportunity that they have is that they will have these satellites that they're launching now, thousands, tens of thousands of satellites, and they're going to give you internet communications from satellites. It's going to start this fall. And the opportunity they have, instead of a satellite that costs $50 million, $100 million, or something less than that, our guy can have very, very inexpensive satellites, a lot of them, and they're going to be able, because of that, going to be able to have them last for some shorter period of time and keep replacing them and keep having, up-to-date technology in these satellites all the time and have an enormously profitable business in SpaceX. There's one point I want to also make, that Elon went to Russia 19 years ago because he had these ideas about getting to Mars and getting into space again, and he wanted to buy a rocket from the Russians. And ultimately, after negotiating, they said, no, we're not going to sell you one. And he said, at the end of the day, with his scientists visiting him, he says, it's all right. I think we can do this ourselves. And then they said to him, what are you going to do with a slingshot? And then afterwards, they launched this rocket, and they got the capsule to the space station. At 17,500 miles an hour in space, it autonomously connected with the space station. And so afterwards, he's on a program, is being interviewed, and he says, so how'd you like that slingshot? And the reason for that was a reference to what the Russians had told him 19 years ago, you're going to get up there on a slingshot? And so that, he did.